Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Well, good morning. This is Stan in Gainesville. Today we are discussing, given circumstances, MDR files. Should we even bother teaching students how to use color filters, prepping your portfolio for LDI and URTA, and summer stock in October? All on Light Talk.
And this is David coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. If you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the original Lumen Brothers. Yay! So first of all, welcome everyone to episode 236.
Whoa.
Yeah, 236. And you've got Stan and David back with you. I took last week off because I spent 2 hours in an MRI tube.
He was in the donut.
I was in the donut for 2
hole.
hours in the loud MRI tube.
They didn't let me in with you.
All right. So anyway, we're back with you today, and we have a lot to talk about today. But before, we've got news. That's right, news. And at the top of the news is our union, IATSE, has approved the strike vote. The strike vote came back at 98% approval to 2%
When did that happen? Did that happen
night.
This morning? Last night.
Yeah, so it's hot off the tickers. You know that beep, beep, beep that we've got? I've got this old ticker tape in my bedroom.
Yeah, 60,000 people voted to go on strike if necessary.
Yeah.
What was the total? That was the affirmative. What was the total vote? 60,000 out of how many people voted?
And one.
I don't know how many people, because it's a lot of people.
They're talking about quality of life and all kinds of things. So, who's going to vote against the strike?
Right.
Well, everybody has to have a job and wants work, but they're striking over something that's important and good.
That's right. And it's a sea change in our business, and that is streaming. And, it's happening on Broadway, obviously. We're getting all these Broadway shows streaming now. Come From Away is streaming now on HBO Max. Obviously, Hamilton, and, of course, the David Burns American Utopia. This is now going to be a regular thing. We've been talking about it for a while now. And I just think that, it's time that everybody get paid a little more, not just the artists, but also all those backstage people. And, in LA, a lot of stagehands in the film industry, they make bupkis. They make very little money. They're like underneath the real LA minimum of $19 an hour. They're making like $16 an hour, which is tough in LA and in New York. So it's about time that get raised.
It's sort of like one thing that if you have a new form that comes along, the streaming thing, it's a fledgling operation, there's a little bit of it going on, and the unions say, okay, we'll do this at a discount because it's help it get off the ground. There's a new thing. Now it's fully mature. Not only is it mature, it's almost a primary place where people are getting their entertainment from. To say you're going to keep those rates the same as they were before, I'm just trying to understand the logic of the other side. I don't really get it. Like, why should we not sort of, the thing has grown, so everything grows. It's just, I don't understand the logic. Does anybody know what the other side is saying?
Yeah, they all want to build spaceships and go into orbit.
Yeah, that's it. Hey, but Will Shatner is going to be the oldest man in space. He's going up at 90 years old in Blue Origin. So beam him. He's beaming up.
Well, how about Leonard Nimoy? Is he dead or is he still alive?
He's already up there.
Oh, he's dead.
Yes, he died.
Okay. They should take his ashes up there and then have William open up the hatch and sprinkle him out into orbit. But
they did that with the actor who played Scotty. They sent his ashes into outer space.
That's right.
He's dead too.
That's right.
How about Uhura?
Yes, she's around. I met her.
She's still alive.
I met her in the Orlando airport. Believe it or not.
I hate to tell you this, but McCoy's dead too.
Yeah,
DeForest Kelly, he's dead.
Yeah, he is.
All the red shirt guys are dead.
Anyway, we'll find out very soon if we're going on strike. And guys, are you striking? I wonder if it's going to be targeted or it's going to be an all-out strike.
Can't do it in Florida.
Well, they can do it, but they could get fired.
No, they can't. Well, we have unions in Florida. We have unions at the Oslo. There's some unions at Disney. I don't know how that's going to work Well, Steve, is Texas a right-to-work state?
Let's back that up. I am not going to cross a union picket line.
I would not either. Good
No,
for
I
you,
wouldn't- I'm
Steve.
not- that's not what I'm
it doesn't
asking.
matter. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to cross a line.
Right.
I think there's a lot of right to work states, but
Yeah, Texas is a right to work state, if I remember correctly. But that doesn't mean that, I agree with Steve. I would not cross that line. And I'm in the union, so Steve, you're still in the union, right?
I have retired. I've officially retired.
Yeah, me too. I've been honorably discharged just last month.
There's a get rid of Stan.
No, I emailed them and they never answered me. It's like, I want to retire, and then they said, "Well, you're not 65."
Who are you?
No, really, it was kind of funny. Then they said, "You're not 65, so you can't retire." Well, I'm going to be 65 in June. Well, if you want to stop on that, you can do what's called an honorable withdrawal. So that's what I did. So I'm honorably withdrawn from United Scenic Artists.
When did you do that?
Like last month.
That is why the lights dimmed on Broadway. I wondered about that.
When the lights go out.
That's very
on Broadway.
sweet.
Anyway, support your local stagehands, support your local technicians, and support your local designers, and do not cross picket lines. Great. So Steve has our first listener question of the day.
It comes from Randy with an I. Randy in St. Louis writes, I am confused about the term given circumstances about the play. Can you explain this? Well, it's not too confusing. If you're doing contemporary work, so, it's hard to ignore the text and how they address this. So, the given circumstances, for example, if you're doing Hairspray, the given circumstances in the text is it's the 1960s and it's in Baltimore. So it would be unusual for you to set it in Atlanta in 1860. Classics, though, when you're looking at Ibsen, Shakespeare, that's a whole different thing. Directors do frequently adjust time and place, which is kind of the core of a given circumstances. The term given circumstances was coined by Stanislavski. And given circumstances refer to, as Stanislavski says, the environmental, historical, and situational conditions a character finds themselves in. So, when you look at a play, you really need to look at that text carefully, an eye to detail, because you're going to see given circumstances generally in that play. And you're going to see what is the character saying? What is the character doing or not doing? What are the other characters saying about them? So, sometimes a director might want to adapt the given circumstances of a play. For example, you're doing Christmas Carol. The director says, let's put it in New York City. Well, that's not quite enough. Given circumstances, what's the world of New York City? Is it all crystally and fluffy white snow in Central Park, or is it like bricks and black sooty snow? So the circumstances, the given circumstances, place, time, action, situation of the characters, that's all core to it, and you find it in the text.
Well, given the given circumstances of this podcast, I must say that that was a really good answer, Steve.
Well, I tip my hat to Konstantin Stanislavski.
There you go. Thank God.
Anybody
for
with a name
Stanislavski.
like Stanislavski's got to be okay by me. Well, Bernard in New Orleans writes, what the heck is a GDTF and an MDR file format? And why should that interest me as a designer programmer? Well, I'm glad you asked, because you'd be surprised. Or let me ask it this way. Bernard, have you ever had your artistic desires or process screwed up by something technical that wouldn't work, or you couldn't get one thing to work over there and something to work over there, and you just were pulling your hair out of your heads? Well, it happens all the time. And I'm just going to go back in history for a moment. And if you go back and listen to our episode with Steve Terry, when he describes the genesis of DMX, he tells us quite clearly about the mess that lighting control systems and dimmers had for a long, long, long time. And he strove to help create this thing called interoperability so that everybody's gear could work with everybody else's gear. And everybody didn't want to do it, and eventually it got done. And then everybody was happy in the long run, even though they were afraid of it at first. And so it actually grew our industry. So the general device type format is what the GDTF stands for. and the MVR, the My Virtual Rig file format, are sort of like the next iteration of where we experience this problem in our creative world and our technical world of interoperability. So have you ever patched the light in a lighting console and you put in what you think is the right personality, and then the damn thing, you put the strobe on and you get cyan, or you pan it and it tilts or whatever? That's a big problem. GDTF starts to help that problem. At MVR, let's say you work in Vectorworks and you do all your work there, and then you want to do some other work in a visualizer like Capture. Do I have to rebuild the whole thing? Well, that creates a problem. So MVR and GDTF create these interoperability connectivities between different softwares without the barriers that we currently experience. So I just want to say that this is good, because now, whatever software I'm working in, if I want to work in something else, to do something else, or somebody else wants to work in something else, we don't have that wall anymore. So I just will say, for me, I just started playing with this. It's only been out for about a year or less. It's in the early phases of development. And it also uses a file format called 3DS, which is for objects like furniture or scenery, that was developed by Autodesk. So this format uses these universal file formats. So I was saying, I've got this plot in Vectorworks, and I want to visualize it in something else. So I exported the MVR file, crossed my fingers, held my breath, spun around 3 times, waited for rain, and then opened it up in another software. And lo and behold, it came in smooth as silk. The fixtures came in. I could map them to the libraries in the other software. The objects came in perfectly. The layers were intact. It was like a dream come true. So now the argument and the conversation about what are you working in and what do you like to do this, and this starts to break down. So I think it's a great thing. I think it's going to really enhance our work in the future.
Tony in Chicago writes, my students are already thinking about summer stock. What is your philosophy regarding summer stock and where they should apply, or does it matter? Well, I'm thinking it's October. First of all, my philosophy regarding summer work is it's fantastic. I've been doing summer work for like the past 40 years, maybe 50 years, a long time. And it's a great way to hone your chops and to get some design gigs too. I mean, you may come in as a master electrician, but maybe you can work out a situation where you design one of the shows. Some of the summer Shakespeare festivals, you could do stuff like that. The smaller ones, more regional ones. The larger ones, obviously, they're going to have professional designers do it. But it's a great way of meeting people. It's a lot of fun. It's sort of like being in the summer in the Catskills. It's sort of like summer camp in a way. There are a lot of things you could do in the summer, so it's great. Does it matter? Absolutely. The more people you meet, the better, and the more experience you get, the better. What do you guys think?
Well, I've had the yin and the yang of summer theater. I've had great experiences in New York, big outdoor musicals with a great team of people. We were like family, kind of the way David talks about Central City, and I just loved it. Went back year after year. It was the hardest work I ever loved. And then I've had the opposite experience. I've worked for a neurotic group of people on an island off the coast of Rhode Island. It was insane. We ran on generators. The people were doing too much. Nobody cared about you. I had to sleep in a soggy room in a boathouse. I mean, it was. I actually almost had a nervous breakdown from that one. So I do think it does matter, and neither one of them necessarily. I got some good reviews on some shows. It didn't make or break my career. I did make some friends, but I do think I think you should be thoughtful about do your due diligence. I would say on the company, and the place I enjoyed, I'd go back tomorrow. The place I didn't, I never want to see again. So I think there's quite a spectrum.
Well, they've probably changed over the years too.
No, they're probably still there. Yeah. They're probably still there.
With the same people running it, that's the thing.
No, they're probably dead.
Yeah. But so it may have changed. Maybe that horrible place is now
actually,
decent.
Actually, the one I worked at in New York is still there because it's the second largest outdoor theater in the state, and it was wonderful. And that I'm not going to name names, but that one still exists. The other one I don't know, but that one, to be fair, we were building it, so we just got the building. And it was really a ground up experience. So I learned a hell of a lot. But we talk about right now we should all be treated with humanely. That was not a humane experience. The other one was hard work, but it was a humane experience.
Yeah. I'll give our listeners a hint on how to make sure that it's a humane experience, and that is make sure that whatever summer stock company you work with has a union contract. And that you have IATSE stagehands. That's the only way. If you look at like Santa Fe, no union people there, and they work those kids. Oh my God! And now it's sort of like boot camp there, but you're working with world-class theater artists. So
yeah, I just had a student come back from Santa Fe, and he loved it. He loved it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place in the summer, but not all of them are like that. I mean,
no.
I've worked at 2 Shakespeare festivals over my career in the summer, and I've worked at 2 opera company festivals in the summer over my career, and both opera companies had union contracts. And it was great because you're only going to be able to work when the union's there.
The place I worked in New York was not union, but interestingly, because New York is a heavily unionized state, the culture rubs off. So people did treat each other, properly.
Well, I would say since it's students, I think Tony probably knows the agenda that he or she has set for his undergraduates. And the summer stock experience there is probably going to be a different type of experience than what he or she is going to set for their graduate students. I think on the undergraduate level, what you have to be careful about, or at least my philosophy, is don't keep going back to the same theater. So you do, you go to whatever, the story of the Alamo, and you do it for 3 seasons, and you're doing it probably for the wrong reasons. The first season, you've learned probably about all you're going to learn, and then you're going back because you have friends going back. Then you're going back again because you get to be the stage left crew chief. So I would think be careful about that. On the graduate level, I would say look at, set your sights a little higher. Look at the theaters that, Dave was talking about, theaters that have a solid reputation that A-list designers are working at. Give your students a chance to make some contacts at those theaters. So again, different agenda for undergraduates than graduates.
Yeah, and sometimes they don't even have to be A-list designers. They could be like B-list designers, people in their late 20s, early 30s, or mid 30s who are, could take you with them. If you impress them as an assistant, like let's say you're an intern at the position and you're like the second assistant and you're learning a lot from the first assistant and you're there at the table with the designers and the whole team, you could impress somebody. And that person could probably take you to do a better show someplace else. And it could be that first assistant who's now breaking into the design world. And it's about who you meet. It really is. Talent has, unfortunately, a limited amount of persuasion or importance. It's about who you meet, when you meet them, and how you get along with them.
Yeah, talent is not enough, I like to say.
You got to have, you got to have talent, obviously, but
it's not
really,
enough.
Yeah, it's not going to get you a lot of work. It really isn't. It's the director's going to get you the work.
You are listening to Light Talk, and today's episode is sponsored by...
All the way from St. Louis, it's Better Than Nothing Industries. We all know this person, the LD who cannot get the crew to pull together as a unit. The one person in the theater that no one listens to, or at worst, does exactly the opposite of what is being asked. That designer who has to tell everyone twice and explain the light plot 3 times. Why does this happen? No one can say. What to do? Well, until now, no one really knew what to do. But now, science, taking a lead from the humble house cat, has the answer. It turns out that cats have a mischievous and somewhat dark reputation in neuroscience. There is research to suggest that a cat's proximity to other mammals can cause them to behave strangely. For example, a cat can release a protozoan, Toxoplasma gondii, or Toxi for short, into its environment, and with exposure, A rat, for example, will become attentive to that cat. In fact, it will seek that cat out, walk right over, and strike up a conversation. Hello, lunch, goodbye, rat. Well, now, Better Than Nothing Industries has captured the miracle of Toxo and locked it into a spray can. That's right. Just arrive at the load in early, apply a few squirts into the work area, and the crew will be eating out of your hand by morning break. Researchers show that Toxo, mixed with a small amount of blood, can travel into a stagehand's brain and cause that stagehand to no longer avoid you, or the areas where you're working, or simply saying no to your bad ideas. In fact, stagehands who were previously repulsed by your incompetence will now flock to your side. These Toxo brain-infested stagehands will joyously labor to make your show extraordinary. How does it work? Who cares? Let's just say Toxo creates a vast amount of dopamine. In fact, by the end of the day, you will need to run for your car while being chased by loving stagehands. It even works on Teamsters and stage managers. So slow down and enjoy that latte. The work will get done. It may not be perfect, but it's better than nothing.
Boy, I learned so much listening to this show.
Yeah. Speaking of cats, this morning, I think I had a cat under my house because I heard all this racket in my walls, and I hear meow, meow, and there's no way I can get under it's like a tiny crawl space. So I haven't heard the cat in a couple of hours. And
put some food outside for it.
A bowl of milk might work. Yeah,
it's far away from the entrance. So
the Toxo stuff will get it out
Toxo. I need some Toxo, Steve. Can you overnight it to me?
Okay.
Definitely not.
And now, back to Light Talk.
Well, the sound of those rabid ducks means that once again it's time for Let's Talk About. And today's Let's Talk About is all about, due to the LED revolution, with students only knowing how to mix additively, should we even bother teaching mixing color with color filters? Gentlemen, what do you think?
Well, this came up for me recently with a student who confessed, as I was sort of mentoring with color choices, said, you know, Professor K, I've never actually used the gel. And my jaw just sort of fell. And I went, seriously? And he said, yeah, my school only had LEDs. So we had no experience with gels. And I thought, oh my goodness, I have to think about this for a minute. Because that's the first time that's ever happened to me.
But it's the sign of the times, because the only places that can afford LED lights are high schools and community colleges.
He came from a small school in I think, Maryland, this particular student.
Yeah, but they have money to buy LEDs.
They had LEDs, yeah. He just never had the exposure to using gel. So it's just caused me to okay, all right, let's talk about how filters work, and let's talk about how filters are different from LEDs. And we had a great conversation, but he doesn't have any. He understands it cerebrally, but that's not the same as understanding it practically, on the ground, using the things differently. And I think even for us, we're making some adjustments to how we think. Are you guys making adjustments to the way you think about and teach color now?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, here's the interesting thing. What's easier to teach, additive mixing or subtractive mixing? And I have my own opinion, but I'm just going to throw it out to you guys. What do you think is easier?
I'm going to go with subtractive.
That's how I grew up, subtractive, because that's what I was taught.
But I think now is not the time to sell your gel. I think now's the time to buy your gel. And I think it comes back to how you're creating that image on stage. I think if you don't understand how gel works, I do think you're going to have trouble in, HMI. I think you're going to have trouble in photography. I think gel needs to be taught, and I think students need to wrap their head around it the same way they're wrapping their head around diachroics or wrapping their head around LED. It's just another brush in their paint bucket that they can work with. And I think the student who's never worked with traditional, conventional lights is at a disadvantage when he or she leaves the university if they continue on that path, simply because, as David brought up, yes, LED is probably the future until something better comes along, but there are hundreds and hundreds of theaters in this country that are still using tungsten lights and will continue to use them for the next 20 years. I mean, I have stuff in the Bob Hope Theater that's tungsten that's 40 years old that, I would love to get rid of, but it comes down to budget, and it still works. So I think gel is a really important tool to understand, and it'll come to an end eventually, but now's not the time.
Long before LED, we had to learn additive mixing. And therefore, because when you mix two lights in the air, right? You mix a blue light with a red light and it's coming on and hitting the stage, it's going to turn lavender.
It's a third color.
Yeah,
right.
It's a third color. So that's always lighter, and that's additive mixing. Additive is crucial, and it was crucial when we were students as well. So you really have to teach both. And I agree with Steve. Even though the student stand came from a very wealthy high school, or maybe it was just a school that was lucky enough to have LEDs.
No, he's a grad student now, and he's still using, to Steve's point, most of our rig, 80% of our rigs at Florida are still incandescent. So I'm not. So I.
But you had to teach him. You had to teach him how to do subtractive.
Yeah, I did.
Right.
So I did have to do a little remedial work there. Yeah, right. Absolutely. And I don't think he should go out not knowing that. But I did teach it to him. But it's still different when you're on the show and picking colors, and you actually see what it does and go, oh, that's not what I expect. That's not what I expected. They do need to learn it. We could speculate about how long it's going to be around. I don't think filters as a concept are ever going to go away. But how long will it be before the conversion is 100%? It depends on how much infrastructure spending gets passed.
Mm-hmm. Well, so also interesting is I still use filters on LEDs. I mean, it's obviously you have beam shaping filters, and diffusions, but also sometimes if it's not really a good LED fixture, sometimes to just get that right color temperature, you have to use a filter. So that happens as well.
Well, I mean, why are all the manufacturers making white LED fixtures?
Right. Studios. Yeah, studio TV. Yeah.
Well, and for theater, I mean, people have... The white source forward wasn't intended to go into a television studio. It was intended to go into a theater. So I think money has something to do with it. Philosophy has something to do with it. Clearly, ETC and Martin and Elation and Strand have all sunk money into a white LED engine. So there are people who want that. And they want to be able to use a color filter in front of it.
Yeah, I haven't met any of them yet. Have you?
Yeah, of course. There are people who want that because, we're just now getting to where, look at ETC's commercial on whatever the latest luster is.
The X8.
And they talk about that. And they start the conversation by saying, until now, a colored LED did not produce a good white light.
True.
And we have solved the problem. And good for them. I congratulate them. What about all these other color LEDs that they and Strand and Martin and Elation are all pumping out because they all had the same problems?
But let me ask this question, Steve, because I think you raised an interesting point. I have not used a white LED rig or seen one that was basically, I put in white light LEDs and fixtures in various situations, but I haven't really seen any theater that's using a white light LED rig with filters. Have you, either of you, done that or seen that?
Yes, I have. I've worked in some theaters that had white LED fixtures. I didn't say, oh, they did these, and this is not a color changing fixture, I'm not going to use it. No, they're great lights.
No. I'm just curious.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not being. It's generally a question of curiosity. Have you seen that, and how does and did you enjoy it? How did it work?
Yeah, it worked fine. You just have to use it in the right place. Sometimes it's a special, sometimes it's who knows. But and as long as you have a bank of them so that they can be all in the same system, you're going to be fine. Cool. Well, Steve has the last question of the day.
Darla in Atlanta writes, I will be attending both the URTA and the LDI portfolio reviews in Las Vegas. What should I bring? I am looking for a grad program and, of course, any professional work I can get over the next 10 months. Well, it's good, Darla, that you've identified the two very different portfolio reviews you're going to. URTA is going to be for continuing of your education, and people who are looking to employ you are looking for the skill sets that you have right now. They're not looking to bring you in and necessarily train you how to do the job. But I mean, it goes without saying, the similarities between the two, you're going to need a resume. And I think I would, keep that down to a one-page resume. I wouldn't bring like a 10 or 15-page resume. Particularly for URTA, I don't know so much about the professional review, but I think it's a good thing to attach a small headshot, something like, a little 2-inch by 3-inch headshot or even smaller. I like looking at the resume and looking at the person when I'm, the photograph. I like remembering the person that I was talking to, and that helps jostle my memory a little bit. Portfolio, selected shots. Sometimes people call them curated shots. I would bring, for URTA, I would bring one show Bible. All your paperwork, magic sheets, hookup, instrument schedule, shop order, light plot. One. I don't need to see 15. It wouldn't hurt to have a couple letters of reference along with you, because someone, particularly a professional looking to employ you, might say, do you have any letters of reference, or can we contact your references? And they're probably going to anyhow. But if you can just whip out a couple letters there, you're just making it that much easier for them to hire you. They don't have to, go through the process necessarily of tracking down your references. You're just handing them everything they're asking for. The biggest mistake people make, I think, particularly at the URTA interviews, is they don't do any homework. So they have no idea who they're talking to, and they have no idea about the school. And it's pretty universal. I've talked to other schools about this. And actually, I was talking a few years ago to the guys at UCLA, and they said they were sitting there, and the student looked at them and said, "Does UCLA have a theater program?" So it's not just little teeny tiny schools they don't know about. They don't know about a lot of schools. So I would look at that URTA sheet. I would look at what the school has to offer, make some notes. You can target 4 or 5 schools. That's all right. But at least know why you're targeting them, and kind of look up the bios of the people that most likely are going to be interviewing you. And I bet you could probably get that interview list from URTA by this point. If a production company or designer is talking to you, it's the same thing. Kind of do your research. Find out, if it's, Gemini out of Dallas, then, you should know that they kind of own the metal market. That's an important little bit of information to have. And of course, feel free to ask questions. Ask questions about what the school is like, or if it's a professional job, ask questions about what your duties are going to be and what's expected of you. What do you guys think?
Well, can I say something about the research thing? Because I think theater people are the worst when it comes to research. And it just drives me crazy. And this goes way beyond their experience as a student into their profession, into even interviewing for faculty positions. Now, the three of us have served on many search committees. How many people did you interview who did zero research on what type of shows you do, what type your program is, who the faculty is? I must tell you, I'm surprised all the time at these job applicants, who come in without knowing what's going on or who the faculty is, for God's sake. It's nuts. And I think what Steve says is really golden advice. Find out who the faculty is. Find out who Steve Woods is. Find out what shows he's done. What were the companies like? Do some research. Look at some of the shows he did. Same thing with Stan, because that will impress somebody, believe it or not. But more importantly, it will also tell the interviewer that you are a curious person.
The other thing, if you're a student, and you probably already do this, if your professor is 30 years old and he or she says, oh, I went to University of Minnesota and it's the best school in the country. That's one thing, because they just graduated. But if your professor is 60 and says, oh, the University of Minnesota, the best school in the country, you got to say why. And if they start telling you about it, what it was like 40 years ago,
right,
then you need to do a little research on your own. But if the guy or girl just graduated and they're telling you about what it was 6 years ago, okay, I'm all in with that. But check your sources too. I hear that all the time. It's like, oh, this is the best school in the country. Who told you? Doc told me before he retired. Okay, well, there you go.
On the very first day of Design Studio, and we team teach that, so there's several of us in the room, but I'll just use myself as an example. One of my colleagues will turn to the students, first question, first class, first semester. Who is Stan K? Who is Mihai Chupe? And if they don't know, they have egg on their face. Sometimes they do, but I guarantee you this, by the second class, they know everything there is to know about us that's available publicly.
Right. Of course.
For about $30, they can find out all kinds of stuff about you.
Right.
Yes, they could. Yes, they could. I'd like to do that in my neighborhood before the homeowners rent to people that we don't know the background on. But in America, they don't want you to do that.
No.
I can see it now. A little hand goes up. Professor K, that incident in 1973 with the Prairie Dogs.
The Prairie Dogs.
Did you do that on purpose?
Oh,
Did you do that on
God.
purpose?
All right, let's get off Prairie
I
Dogs.
you guys like to have me once a month to just whip me, but
That's
it's
right.
all right. I love it.
Well,
Okay.
the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tells us that once again you spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on Spotify, iTunes, Google, YouTube, livedesignonline.com, Amazon Prime Music, and just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website on lighttalk.org for future guests, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
Just so you know, even though I'm only here once a month, the law firm is still under retainer. So if you decide to litigate, I do have them in writing. The law firm of Flex, Block, Flare, and Glare and their paralegal Snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, and just left of the Chisholm Trail.
And be sure to join us next week where we chat about more useless things and explore the crazy shenanigans in our industry.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Arrivederci.
Light Talk.